Hi guys, in this short little video I would like to talk to you about palette layout. First of all, materials. This palette right here is a glass palette, and there's a couple of reasons I like glass palettes. One is that they're inexpensive. This one is just actually a piece of glass from a frame. And what I've done is I've taken some masking tape and taped the edges so I don't accidentally cut myself. And you can see that this palette's been used more than once. The next thing that I like about glass palettes is that if you happen to have paint dry on it, it's really easy to clean off with a razor blade. And this is a little tool you can get. This is also well used, that you holds a razor blade for you, and when you just have your dried paint on here, you just take it and scrape it off. So that's pretty easy to do. Next, I'd like to show you how I like to lay my palette out. I like to lay it out kind of in the order I would see it on a color wheel. And I like to start out with a big squeeze out of white. So I put at least that much white out when I'm painting. You'll also see that there's a quarter. This is a quarter on here. It is easiest, and a lot of people find it hard to squeeze out a lot of oil paint because they don't want to waste it, right? They're afraid of wasting it, and let's face it, oil paint is not cheap. A person can really do themselves a disservice by not squeezing out enough paint. They can find themselves constantly having to grab that tube, open it up, and squeeze out more paint right in the middle of mixing that perfect color, which can be very frustrating. Or they will often find themselves mixing teeny tiny piles of paint, which simply don't go very far on the canvas. I like to squeeze my paint out on one edge of the palette. So on this one, I'm going to squeeze it out across this edge, or if you like, you can maybe squeeze it across this edge. It's up to you, but if we keep our paint squeezed out on the edge of the palette, this leaves a lot more room for mixing. So remember, at least a quarter size pile of paint to squeeze out. So I'm going to start with the primaries. I always like to have my blue on the left. I'm not sure why, but that is definitely the case. So I got a nice quarter size pile there. Then my alizarin crimson next. So these are the three primaries that I put on the supply list. So there's a nice quarter size pile. I like these. These are my colors that I use most of the time. So I buy them in big tubes so they'll last a while. And this is my cad yellow. So those are my quarter size piles. For the colors that I don't use as often, I might do more of a nickel size. So these colors aren't required for class, but I was just going to show you how I lay these out. This is considered a warm blue, ultramarine, and I'm going to squeeze out a little bit of phthalo blue. Phthalo is a super strong color, so I actually don't need to squeeze a ton of that color out. And also I have my, this is alizarin crimson, is considered a cool red, and I'm going to put a warm red next to it. This is cad red, cadmium, I should say the whole name there. And then next I'm going to squeeze out a cool yellow next to my warm yellow. And also I don't use as much of this as I do the cad medium, so I won't squeeze out quite as much. But you can see if I put my finger in there, about the size of splotch you'd like to squeeze out. And you might be asking, what does she mean by cool and warm reds, cool and warm yellows, cool and warm blues? Well, that will be the topic of our next video. Before we move on to the next video, though, I do want to point out that this is how I like to lay out my palette. This feels correct. It feels organized to me. Now, you may have a different system on how you would like to organize your colors, and that is totally fine. What's important is that once you've decided how you like to lay them out, that you stick to it. Because the goal is to have those locations become subconscious. So when you're mixing colors, you don't have to think about it. You can just automatically reach for that cad red and save that brain space for other concerns. The best analogy I've heard about why you want to put your paint colors in the same place every time is playing the piano. If someone were to move your keys around when you're wanting to play a beautiful song, it becomes very difficult to play that song while you're hunting for the right note. Once again, if you have any questions, just go ahead and email me or jot them down and ask them in class. I love to have people ask me questions. Little questions, big questions, it doesn't matter. They're all important.